Have you ever felt like you're constantly starting something new, but never finishing? Maybe you signed up for an online course, got excited in the first few days, watched 2 or 3 lessons, and then stopped. Maybe you promised yourself you'd learn to play an instrument, speak another language, read more, code, draw, invest, cook, run, write, edit videos, meditate. The list goes on. If you answered yes to at least one of these, welcome. You're not alone. This is the new silent epidemic of the digital age, the illusion of constant learning. Today, we have more access to information than any generation in history. YouTube, podcasts, ebooks, courses, tutorials, PDFs, AI tools, all right at our fingertips. And yet, paradoxically, we've never felt so stuck. It's like we're always moving, but going nowhere, like we're learning a lot, but retaining almost nothing. There's a name for this: surface learning, a modern addiction to starting things but never finishing, knowing a little bit of everything, but mastering nothing. And the worst part, it feels like progress, but here's the truth. The problem isn't you. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not laziness. It's not that you're incapable. The real problem is the model you've been following. In our current system, learning has become a race. The faster you learn, the better. The more certificates, tutorials, apps, hacks you collect, the more it seems like you're ahead. But this rush is robbing you of the most important thing in learning: depth. True learning demands repetition, silence, discomfort, and that doesn't sell. So nobody talks about it. Have you noticed how everything today is designed to make you feel like you're advancing? Language apps give you points just for logging in. Courses show you're 10% complete just for watching the introduction. 3-minute videos promise to teach you everything you need to know, but all you're left with is a shell, the illusion of having learned. Until the moment you actually need to use that knowledge. And freeze, that's when you realize something. Knowing is not mastering. Mastering a skill is completely different. It takes time, dedication, persistence, humility, and most of all, it takes a change in mindset. Today, we confuse learning with hoarding. But to master something, you must empty yourself, empty the rush, empty the need for recognition, empty the ego that wants to prove something to the world, and surrender to the process. And that's exactly what ancient Japanese philosophy teaches. In Japan, learning is a path, not a race. It's a sacred ritual, not a performance. There's a beautiful word in Japanese, shokunin. It refers to an artisan who dedicates their life to mastering a single craft. It could be slicing fish, shaping clay, sharpening swords, or serving tea. The task doesn't matter. What matters is how it's done, and the how is always with soul, with repetition, with respect. You might have heard of Jiro Ono, the sushi master featured in the documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi. He owns a tiny restaurant in Tokyo with just 10 seats and 3 Michelin stars. Jiro trains his apprentices by having them wring out a hot towel for an entire year before they even get to touch the rice. Then years just to observe how to cut the fish. Only after 10 years do they get to cook. Sounds extreme by today's standards. But there's a powerful lesson there. Mastery comes only when you respect the process. Eastern wisdom doesn't separate body from mind. It sees them as one. Which is why, in this view, learning isn't memorization, it's transformation. That's what people miss when they talk about being a polymath. A polymath isn't someone who collects courses or juggles 10 skills at once. A polymath is someone who reinvents themselves through every skill, who steps into the unknown with the humility of a beginner, who brings the same patience, the same presence, the same respect to every new journey. Japanese philosophy has a word for this too: shoshin, the beginner's mind. Even after decades of experience, the master stays curious, open, humble. They never think they've arrived. They know they are always beginning again. Maybe that's what's missing in your process. You don't need another course. You need to relearn how to learn, replace urgency with presence, comparison with consistency, and accumulation with depth. According to a Microsoft study, the average human attention span today is 8 seconds, less than a goldfish. We jump from one stimulus to another, unable to focus. And that affects the way we learn too. But here's the good news. Your brain is plastic. It adapts, it grows. With intentional practice and deliberate repetition, you can train your mind to master anything. You just have to follow a different path. Quieter, deeper, slower, more conscious. And that path begins with a single word, Shuhari. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter. At the end of the last chapter, we talked about something essential. If you want to master a skill, any skill, you have to unlearn the way the modern world teaches you to learn. You have to replace speed with presence and replace surface level curiosity with deep commitment. That's where the path of the true polymath begins. Not the kind you read about in productivity blogs, but the quiet kind. The kind rooted in centuries of discipline, patience, and inner growth. And that path has a name, Shuhari. Shuhari is an ancient Japanese concept, originally from martial arts, but its wisdom goes far beyond combat. It's a framework for mastering anything, from karate to calligraphy, from making tea to mastering leadership or design. Shuhari is made up of 3 stages. Shu, obey the form ha, po, break the form ri, li, transcend the form let's break each one down. Shu, obey the form shu means to protect or to obey. It's the beginner phase. In this stage, you don't question. You copy, you repeat, you submit to the form, you follow the rules exactly as they were given. You trust the master and the process. This stage is uncomfortable for many modern learners, because we're told we need to be creative and think outside the box from day one. But that's not how mastery works. You can't break the form until you understand it. And you can't understand it until you've repeated it enough times to feel it in your bones. Shu is where humility is forged. It's where the ego is quieted. And without this foundation, nothing solid can be built. Ha! Break the form. Once you've internalized the basics, you move into ha, which means to break. Now you start experimenting. You begin to understand not just the what, but the why. You modify techniques, you try new angles, you test your own limits. But there's a trap here, ego. Many get stuck in this phase, thinking they've arrived. They feel confident enough to teach, but they haven't truly gone deep enough yet. A true learner remains humble, even in ha, because mastery is not about performance. It's about integration. Transcend the form, and then comes to transcend. This is the highest level. You no longer follow the rules because they're part of you. You've internalized the craft so deeply that your actions become natural, effortless, instinctive. You can create your own style. You're not bound by the form, you are the form. At this stage, you're no longer just a student, you become a master. And eventually, a teacher, Shuhari, isn't just a method. It's a spiritual roadmap. It applies to every area of life, learning, relationships, business, personal growth. But to reach you need something rare today: patience. That's where another powerful Japanese concept comes in: Kaizen. Kaizen, continuous improvement. Kaizen means change for better, but not through big leaps. It's not about breakthroughs. It's about incremental daily progress, the 1% improvement, the unnoticed repetition, the refinement no one else sees. Want to draw? Draw the same hand every day for a month. Want to learn a language? Master the same 20 verbs until they live in your mouth. Want to be a better speaker? Talk to yourself in the mirror every night for 10 minutes. Record it, watch it, adjust, repeat. That's Kaizen. It's slow, it's boring, but it works. It builds muscle. It rewires your brain. It sharpens your awareness. Kaizen is invisible until it isn't. That's why Jiro Ono, the sushi master we mentioned earlier, trained his students for a decade before they could cook rice. Because each detail, how to hold a knife, how to slice, how to clean the counter, was a chance to improve. Not all at once, but gradually, silently, perfectly. Wabi-sabi, beauty in imperfection. But there's one more principle you need to walk this path fully. Because even with discipline and patience, you'll still make mistakes. That's where wabi-sabi comes in. Wabi-sabi is the Japanese philosophy of finding beauty in imperfection. It values the incomplete, the cracked, the worn. It celebrates age, asymmetry, and the natural cycles of life. When you apply wabi-sabi to learning, something profound happens. You stop being afraid of mistakes. You begin to understand that errors are not failures, they're stepping stones. You embrace rough drafts. You learn from awkward first tries. You forgive yourself when progress is slow. In a world obsessed with perfection, wabi-sabi is an act of rebellion. It says keep going, even if it's messy, because mastery isn't clean, it's earned. Now let's bring it all together. Shuhari gives you the structure. Kaizen gives you the practice. Wabi-sabi gives you the grace. Together, they form a hidden method, a path that can take you from zero to mastery in anything. It doesn't rely on talent. It doesn't require the latest app. It only asks for your consistency, humility, and patience. And if you need a real-life example of someone who lived all three principles, look no further than Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi was Japan's greatest samurai. He never lost a duel, over 60 in total, but he was more than a warrior. He was also an artist, a philosopher, a strategist, and a writer, a true polymath. And how did he master so many disciplines? Through discipline, yes, but more importantly, through presence. He trained alone, repeated techniques endlessly, observed the patterns in nature, studied his thoughts, integrated everything. In his book, The Book of Five Rings, Musashi writes, "From one thing, know 10,000 things." That's the essence of the polymath. Not scattered knowledge, but deep learning that multiplies itself. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. We live in the era of comparison. You see someone who's already great at something and think you're behind. You compare your first step to someone else's 10th year, and that's the biggest mistake, because real mastery, the kind that lasts, is not built in public. It's built in silence, one quiet repetition at a time. So ask yourself, can you slow down? Can you focus? Can you trust the process? Because if you can, you'll realize something powerful. You really can master anything if you're willing to begin again, if you're willing to respect the invisible, if you're willing to change. And when you do, you'll understand that learning a skill is just the beginning. The true reward is who you become, and that's what we'll talk about in the final chapter. At the end of the last chapter, we uncovered something fundamental. The goal of mastering a skill isn't just to know more. The real goal is to become more. And that's what separates a superficial polymath from a true one. Being a polymath has never been about impressing others. It's not about listing a dozen talents or having a flashy resume. That's decoration, not transformation. A true polymath doesn't just collect abilities, they grow a deep inner awareness through every new skill. They don't just switch tools, they shed skins, because true mastery isn't about knowing how to do more things. It's about who you become through the things you choose to learn. Mastery, at its core, is a process of letting go of the ego that wants to already know, letting go of the fear of being a beginner, letting go of needing applause, and learning to be fulfilled by the process itself. That's the journey of becoming a true polymath. Take Miyamoto Musashi again. He didn't study calligraphy just to write beautifully. He studied it to understand flow, to feel the rhythm, the silence between strokes. And he brought that same rhythm into his swordsmanship, into his art, into his philosophy. Musashi wasn't many things. He was one essence, expressed through many forms. That's the secret of the polymath. They don't keep changing who they are with every skill. They keep deepening who they are. Each skill becomes a new lens, each craft a new mirror, each challenge a new refinement of the same soul. So this isn't a journey to become someone different. It's a journey to become fully you. And that's why most so-called multitaskers still feel unfulfilled. They've learned things, sure, but they haven't let those things change them because they were focused on output, not evolution. And why? Because we were taught to chase performance, not presence, to chase visibility, not identity. But no true mastery is visible in the beginning. It's built in silence. It grows in the dark. It's in the quiet moments of daily practice. The repetition no one sees, the internal battle, the patience when results are slow. The choice to stay consistent even when no one's watching. That's where the real transformation happens, and the beauty. Over time, people start to notice. Your words carry more weight. Your movements become more intentional. You radiate calm, confidence, and clarity without having to explain yourself, because what's mastered in the body doesn't need to be proven with the mouth. And that's when you realize the skill is no longer something you know. It's something you are. A true polymath doesn't say, "I know how to write. I know how to lead. I know how to speak." They just do it. With calm, with clarity, with soul. And when someone asks how they learned it all, they smile and say, "I just practiced every day." That's the final teaching of the Japanese path. Repetition is not a burden. It's a meditation. It's not about doing something over and over again. It's about doing it consciously, gratefully, with presence, until it becomes not just what you do, but who you are. At that point, the practice becomes your character. And every skill you've learned becomes part of a deeper whole. Because learning isn't just about knowledge, it's about integration, about expressing the same essence through new forms. That's why the last concept we need to bring this all together is ikigai. Ikigai, your reason for being. Ikigai is a Japanese word that means the reason you get out of bed in the morning. It's where your passion, your talent, the world's needs, and what you can offer all meet. When you discover your ikigai, learning stops being an obligation. It becomes a natural expression of your spirit. But here's the key. Ikigai isn't something you find. It's something you build, one choice at a time, with each habit, each skill, each commitment to depth over speed. This path isn't fast. It doesn't promise fame. But it gives you something far more powerful, meaning. In a 2014 study from Harvard, people who engage in continuous learning report higher levels of purpose, fulfillment, and long-term happiness. Why? Because when you truly commit to learning, you're not just gaining knowledge, you're taking control of your personal evolution. You stop chasing trends, you stop needing motivation, you start showing up day after day with quiet discipline. And eventually, you understand something very few people do. The best version of you isn't the one who knows everything. It's the one who never stopped learning. So let me ask you, are you learning to impress others, or are you learning to honor the person you're becoming? Do you want to know more, or do you want to be more? That answer changes everything. Because, yes, you can master any skill, but not without sacrifice, not without slowing down, not without deciding to let go of the noise and walk with intention. You don't need to be the most talented. You don't need to be the fastest. You don't need to be the smartest. You just need to be consistent, present, willing, and above all, respectful of time, of silence, of process. Because the polymath's journey is not one of accumulation, it's a journey of becoming. Each skill is a mirror, each practice a doorway, each challenge a teacher, and by the end of the road, you'll realize that this was never about learning everything. It was about becoming someone who can learn anything, and that is freedom.